This is my second to last homily that I will be filming and putting online. If you understand the reference, these final two homilies that I will post online are an attempt to reach people still stuck in the matrix, the web of smartphones, TV, social media, etc. Tonight I'll be preaching about an alternative way of ordering and structuring our lives. St. Paul, in his second letter, tells the Ephesians, first of all, live in a manner worthy of the call you have received. But then he follows that with patience. I won't ask you to raise your hand, but I'm assuming that for most of us, one of our greatest challenges is patience. St. Paul continues, bearing with one another through love. Again, I won't ask you to raise your hand, but most of us probably struggle to bear with one another. And finally, lest we think bearing with one another is easy, St. Paul says, striving to preserve the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. If bearing with one another were easy, he wouldn't have used the word striving to preserve the unity. Unity takes striving, it takes effort. And so here is the homily in a nutshell. I will seek to establish that we are living in a post-truth society. Most of you probably already know that. And in a post-truth society, it will be at least my contention that the only thing, or maybe the most effective thing that speaks to people is small or large radical acts of charity. And I have a program that encourages sacrificial living, spiritual direction, poverty, accountability. It's not actually my program. It was thought up about 1,000 years ago. It's the Third Order of the Franciscans. And I'll be reflecting on that just briefly tonight. Pope Leo XIII, over 140 years ago, foresaw the demise of truth in our world and the approaching relativism. Relativism just being, that's only true for you, that's not my truth. Maybe, I'm assuming most of you have heard that phrase being thrown around these days. He said this because he saw the demise of truth, or lack of a willingness to acknowledge any truth. He said the following: the Third Order of St. Francis should be studiously promoted and sustained, for the whole object of this order is to, 1, invite persons to an imitation of Jesus Christ, secondly, to a love of the Church, and thirdly, to an observance of all Christian virtues. I will actually be giving a retreat on this topic at the Mother of the Redeemer Retreat Center in mid-September. More information on how to register for this is in the bulletin. Let me just say here briefly that canon law requires every priest to do a 5-day retreat every year. So I think every layperson deserves at least one weekend retreat every couple of years. Some basic questions. What is the Third Order of St. Francis? Well, St. Francis founded the First Order. That was the brothers and the priests who followed him, and he eventually established that. The Second Order was started by St. Clare, who was a companion of Francis. Second Order, not because women rank lower than men, but just because it was second sequentially. And then eventually, over time, diocesan priests and the laity wanted to participate in the charisms of the Franciscans as well, the spiritual gifts. And so the Third Order involves an ongoing formation, spiritual growth, etc. And I think it's just the perfect response to the attacks leveled against the truth in our own day. The three transcendentals are beauty, truth, and goodness. Those are the three things that, regardless of whatever one's background happens to be, those are the three things that should be able to be viewed or discerned by every person. Truth already is under assault. So it is taking the approach of trying to use goodness, to draw people closer to the Catholic Church, closer to a relationship with Jesus Christ, etc. It also is a really thorough program because I won't be here forever. And this is just the type of thing that helps transition and bridge priests being shuffled around. A local chapter of the Third Order Franciscans, trying to live an intentional way, meeting once a month, prayer commitments, etc., is the way to survive the shuffling around of priests that are so common in the U.S. and around the world, particularly in our own day. The Third Order Franciscans involve a period of discernment for about a year, of getting formation and so forth, and then you can decide whether you want to take the plunge or not. I am convinced that becoming a Third Order Franciscan is the perfect way to live what Paul describes in the second reading. Live in a manner worthy of the call you have received, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another through love, striving to preserve the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace.